And a lot of them are pretty good to me. But and they're not due till tonight, so I'm cool with that. But is James here? I don't see James. Oh, there he is, yeah. James, can you hear me?
Yeah.
So I was looking at, and I wanted to talk about this anyway. You have, where is it? Here it is. And by the way, you guys, JPEGs, okay? Not PDFs and not PNGs, JPEGs.
Oh, I send you PDF.
Yeah, I know.
Okay, I'll send it again.
Yeah, it's already there. It's fine.
Okay.
I mean, it's not the end of the world. It's just it's harder for me to deal with a JPEG if I'm going to work over it or anything like that. Okay. So let's go.
Wait, so you want JPEG, not PDF?
Yeah. So from here on out, don't worry about it right now.
Okay.
Let me switch my screen. Let me get this. Okay. And let me launch. I should have launched those. I try and have everything launched beforehand. How's everybody doing? Everybody all right?
Yep.
Yeah.
Today I'm not doing anything other than going back to sleep. Okay, so let's go. Actually, let me do two things. Hang on. I just did this little quick thing right before class because I was looking at James, and I wanted to talk about this anyway. Oops. So, okay, so let me share my screen with you guys. Okay, remember I got to do a group capture at some point so I can know who's here. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen with you. Okay, you guys see that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, I mean, I like this. I like this solution, this here, and then turning into this. That was clever, that you use the top of it to get the teeth on the bottom. I also like this, that you're doing this. Like, do you see how when you put those marks over the lighter marks over the darker marks, it starts to sit back more like a reflection?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah?
Yeah.
James, turn your mic up if you can. Okay, but one little trick you can do, and this is my world's worst castle graphic, is I'm going to, let's put this in front. I'm going to say that this is sitting in front of water or behind water. And I'm going to go reflect. Okay, so I reflected that, okay? I'm going to pull this up. And I'd work that little part out. This would go behind that, and that's all that. But, or I could use my curvature tool, by the way. I could come here, just pull that up to meet it a little better. Okay, so I'm going to put a gradient over this. I'm going to go into my regular, just pick a gradient. I'm going to make sure it's black and white, which the default one is. I'm going to put the, I think it goes this way. Then I'm going to select both these objects. I'm going to go to the transparency window, and right here it has make mask. And you can see, okay, so you can see it faded it. Do you see that?
Yeah.
So I'm going to come in here now and go, I can adjust it over in my gradient toolbar. So however much of that I want to, so I'd probably want it to sort of die somewhere in there. Or actually it would keep going. So let's keep going. And that way I could get a little bit of that, and I'm going to pull it back a little bit. because it doesn't need to be that prominent. And now we're starting to get a nice little reflection. And then now when I put, that's weird. Hang on. My tools are, my objects are, oh, that's why. So I'm still in the mask, okay? So that's a good lesson right there. I'm still in the mask, so I need to go click here, and then it lets me out of the mask. And now I can grab this, and when I put my reflections or my highlights over the top of it, I can start to get a nice little reflected idea going on there. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, I want afterwards, after we're off of here, I want you guys to all try that, because it's a, just remember, you got to have your, somebody say something? You got to have your mask or your gradient on top of the object, okay? And then it'll mask it out. And then when you want to adjust it, you got to go back over into the mask window and click the little, I think it's the icon or whatever the thing was. And then it lets you in, and then you can go to your gradient and you can adjust the gradient. Make sense?
Yes.
Nice little trick, okay? Because it feels kind of Photoshoppy, which I think is useful. There was, hang on a sec. I have my notes written down. Oh, okay. And then I put up, let me find this real quick. I put up a folder called, or a graphic called skulls on, well, let's look at these real quick. Okay, Michael.
Yeah.
Okay, so this down here is a piece of technology, correct?
Yeah.
So it's like a ship?
Yeah.
Now, I like that it looks kind of weirdly organic, and I love this, like these, you know, do you see the value of those textures on there, how it just makes it more interesting?
Mm-hmm.
I would probably just define this out a little bit more. Another thing I'd probably do is you got light coming from here. So that gives you an excuse to have a cast shadow on the ground here, and that'll really ground it. Does that make sense?
It's kind of like a floating city, so it's like up in the atmosphere kind of a thing.
That's right.
So you told me before to put like some more ground stuff really far in the back.
Maybe it's like, I think I need something in here, and I think we talked about this a little bit, that I know what it is down in that far down below. I also think that this part right here of these like pillars or whatever, they need to fade probably. I need to see them probably fade out a little more maybe. And then maybe
Start the fade earlier?
Yeah, maybe, I'm not sure.
Okay.
And but I mainly think that I need something recognizable down here that's big, like pine, it doesn't have to be pine trees, but something like that. That is a really, sometimes you got to use things that are recognizable to people just as a reference point. So they go, oh, those are big and they're way down there and they're small. So your brain instantly knows like, oh, that's way down there and we're up high.
Okay.
That makes sense?
Yeah.
So you always got to give the brain some frame of reference, or somehow you're telling that story, if that makes any sense, right?
Right, yeah.
Okay. And I might put a little bit darker value on this foreground object, maybe as it's turning around here.
Right.
Like on this side, maybe, because it's really going to pull it forward.
Mm-hmm.
And then I might just go, and this is just minor stuff, I might put like something like it looks almost like rope or something here. I might put something hanging here like that, you know, in that foreground, because it would make sense. Okay. And then you darken these up against the lighter value background, right?
Yeah.
Okay, good. All right.
Thank you.
And who's this? This is,
That one's mine.
okay, here's the other thing. You can't give me it and it says Pawnee, Indiana, because I don't know who that is.
It's from a show.
No, not that. Your file has to be your name.
Oh, okay.
Okay?
Yeah, okay.
Actually, I like this one. I like that you put it together in like a graphic design idea. Now,
Yeah.
I would make sure that these trees have some asymmetricality to them.
Okay.
And I don't mind that they're basically the same size, because if you were landscape designing this thing, you probably would have planned at the same times. You probably a lot of landscape designers will go for asymmetricality, but just the tree shapes themselves could be a little more varied, right?
Yeah.
But they could be more or less the same size, because you know, they might plan it that way. Okay.
Okay.
Now, normally I would have said pull the path coming out here. And I don't know, I would play with it, but I also don't mind it being a lawn. You might access it this way.
Mhm.
So I think that's okay. And I'm assuming this is based on a real place, right?
It's
Oh, no,
a
it's based
show
on a
called
fantasy.
Parks and Rec. I think it's a real building, but it's
It is a real
fictional-
building.
What
yeah.
is the building?
It's in Pasadena.
That's what I thought. Okay. Because it looks like Pasadena City Hall.
Yeah.
You guys ever go to that building?
Yeah.
You guys, if you ever want to go on a good sketch trip, that's a good spot. It's like jumping into Europe for 5 minutes. You know, I mean, that building is really spectacular. And especially if you go there as they start lighting it up at night, you know, like dusk and then into the nighttime, it's really a spectacular looking building. It tells you how much wealth that area had for, you know, it's old money in that area. All right. Okay, cool. I don't know why this one isn't previewing. Oh, there it goes. Okay, and the thing I like about what you did here is that you really went full on painterly. Even this stuff back here, these like little splots and stuff.
Yeah.
Where'd you get that at?
I used a spray brush, so
Oh,
yeah.
is that like a watercolor thing?
I forgot what is this.
It's
I
cool.
don't know.
I didn't
Okay.
know that one. So you got to tell me what it is because I like that. And I
Oh,
like
okay.
that you went full on painterly. Like not too many people do that. I had one last term maybe, but
Mhm.
these are not. This is cool. So you're
Okay.
obviously you're understanding it, correct?
Yes. I have a question. My green grass color on the right-hand side is totally different on Illustrator. I tried to transfer in this folder. It's different.
Sometimes what'll happen when you're exporting something or you're exporting something or open in a different color environment, it will switch stuff. Okay.
Oh, okay.
So sometimes, I don't know if you ever noticed this. Actually, I should do a talk on this because I haven't. I don't usually talk about it that much.
All
But
right. Because the file is very heavy, so it gives me hard time to work again and again.
well, here,
So I just
let's
try
talk
to
about
just-
color space because color space, sometimes when you drop something into something, like you'll get it a lot in Photoshop and you'll pull something from somewhere else and you'll pull it into Photoshop and Photoshop will go, you want to change that to this color environment or do you want to keep it like these are two different color environments? Because now, or like in Photoshop or in Illustrator, because Illustrator, and I'll go through this, I hadn't thought of this, I'll go through this next week.
Okay.
Illustrator has like things where it goes export for screens and all these different things, export for web. And what they're doing is they're making this specific to a certain color environment. Okay. So if you're going out to web or whatever, the web likes certain colors and all those kind of things. And you'll notice sometimes, and I don't think it's nearly as bad as it used to be. It used to be way worse, but I still see it. Okay. Because I've done certain files where I export them out, I'm going to send them to somebody or whatever. And I go, whoa, those are completely different. And I got to go in and tweak all that stuff. But it's usually a color space thing, okay? Which I will talk about next week because I'm actually glad you said that because I didn't think of that.
Isn't next week spring break?
Is it what? Oh, next week is spring break. Ironically, we have spring break from endless being at home,
How ironic. Indeed.
which is totally bizarre to me. This whole thing is so bizarre to me. Let me double check that though. I want to make sure that. So, yes, it is next week. Somebody brought that up yesterday and I forgot about it. And yeah, it's totally weird to have vacate. It's not like this is a vacation because a lot of, I'm working more than normal and probably a lot of you guys are too. But you can't go anywhere. So what the hell's the point of spring break? But I think it's actually, for me, it's good because I got a whole bunch of, I have to create so much video content and so much online content and all that kind of stuff that it'll give me a week to catch up. And I need that week to catch up. Because, it's a lot of content creation right now. Let me see if I can find. Yeah. Okay, good job.
Thank you.
And then I think I'm gonna go and see if I can get one more, because I think there was at least one more in there. These are due today, you guys. And start getting them in there half an hour before class.
Yeah, I woke up late.
No work. There's no work growing up or getting up late.
I know.
It wasn't finished yet.
And okay, so like I always put the date. If you notice, I always put the date. Hang on. I always put the date 11:59 that night. The reason I do that is so even if you're not totally done, you can put it in there and have me take a look at it. Just like James, you know, doing that little fade on his island thing would have been a nice little thing, but I forgot to show it to you guys. So that's kind of on me. But you might have time then to alter it if you want. By the way, I think I've said this before, as long as you get things in there on time, you can alter them throughout the term, and I'll jump up the grade on them. No. I don't want to do. Oh well. Oh, cool, Sarah.
Yep. That's mine.
Pretty nice.
Thank you.
You're quiet online, man.
Well, I don't know what to say.
Just I mean, looks like you got it fine. So it all made sense?
Yeah.
That's nice, man. And you know what I really like is the way you abstracted the leaves here and you masked them together.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Question?
I kind of tried doing just the leaves, but then it didn't really match like the other trees. So I just try to make it a little more saturated.
Yeah, and also the way you abstracted them is more the way your eye sees them when you're doing a more natural kind. And then these back here, these like clouds and stuff, that's cool.
Yeah, I mostly use just the brushes.
Yeah. You understand, like, see how you're getting such a nice, more painterly kind of thing?
Yeah, it's really cool.
It
like
is
all
cool.
the other top tech. I also added the foam brush PNG that you gave us.
Oh, yeah.
Like on top, it kind of gives it more of that like washed out look, which is
Yeah,
really,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, that's great. That's really good. Good for you, man. That's cool.
Thank you.
And, you know, the thing I like about that, and I mean, the whole thing with this whole texture thing, and I want you guys to understand, is when you look at vector art, and I love like the flat vector art too, like the shag looking kind of stuff and all that. But I don't think that a lot of people don't really think about it in a sort of more organic point of view.
Right.
But to me, you know, it broadens out your skill set, obviously, right? And then what I'm hopefully, always hoping in every class that at some point you guys are going to start, you know, you start developing your own style by, you know, this class and that class and this and that and everything. You start putting that stew together, and it's your stew, not somebody else's. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
We were just talking about this morning because there was an instructor, and I was looking at, he posted something about his teacher, right? From way back or whatever. And I was looking at the teacher, and I went and looked at the teacher's painting stuff, and I never realized this. He completely ripped off his style from his teacher. Okay. And you see that a lot because I think that there's a place in the academic environment where this, because I remember it when I was in school. Like when the Clayton brothers came to Art Center, and I don't think it was that much longer than when I got there. And I don't think they really tried to do this. It just sort of happened. But they were like cool guys. They were young. They were like post-punk dudes. They were having this amazing career. And then all of a sudden, everybody in the illustration department, like a lot of people in the illustration department, started looking just like the Clayton brothers. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And trying to be cool and trying to be these guys and all that stuff. And it's like, man, if you do that, you are always second, third, fourth, fifth best because they already did it.
Right.
You know what I mean? And what I got, and I think what's good to get from any teacher, I don't care who it is, and I got this from Rob Clayton. I took classes with Rob. He taught me all these really cool old school techniques, illustration techniques. you know, that were all traditional back then. And I didn't want to be Rob Clayton, you know what I mean? But it's like those techniques were super cool, and I've used them over the years for all different types of stuff, you know? It's like they're just giving you tools, you know, and you got to create, or they're giving you ingredients, and you got to create the stew, right?
Right.
So hopefully, you know, you're building all these things, and they come from all over the place, you know, who knows what, you know. That's why when we get teachers sometimes, and they'll go, they try and claim a student. I go, you can't claim that student, you know? Because they've had however many, not just teachers, other students have taught them stuff, you know what I mean? And they become their own person. And you know, if we're doing this right, you just become your own people. Does that mean, or your own artist, your own designer, right? And your major is graphic design?
Actually, I kind of wanted to do advertising, but you were saying how you don't like advertising.
No. I didn't say I don't like it.
Uh-huh.
I think advertising is really interesting, actually.
Yeah.
I'll never say, I might say I don't like a style or something, but I'm never going to tell you I don't like a whole
Like a genre.
major genre or anything. I'm not even like, I always go on and on about how much I don't like anime, right? But I know that there's anime out there that's probably really good that I probably would like.
Yeah.
I just haven't seen it, okay? Or I don't like hip hop, right? But I've heard hip hop that I like. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, you can't just negate anything 100%. And I think advertising is actually interesting. What I think I said was, advertising is a weird thing right now. How is it defined?
Yeah.
And if you talk to Stephen about this, because that's actually what made me think about it. I hadn't even thought about this. But Stephen came out of advertising, graphic design at Art Center, and we both went to Art Center. And when he brought somebody out from Art Center to talk, and they were in the advertising department or whatever. And the advertising department at Art Center used to be the biggest, I didn't know this, it used to be the biggest major, right? Biggest program. And now I think it's the smallest program.
Oh, wow.
Which is,
it's really small.
What's that?
It's really small. When I went to the open house, like the advertising department was kind of like reaching out to people, trying to get people interested.
Braden, what major are you going in as?
Graphic design.
Is it still graphic design advertising?
No, that's split.
Oh,
Still on the same floor, but it's like split in a major.
Huh. So what do you want to do exactly? I know we talked about this, but what do you want to do exactly?
That's the thing. I'm not really completely set on a specific path, but I know that starting there in the graphic design department, I can kind of branch out further than if I would have went straight into like advertising or something.
You will find your place over there. Okay. And one of the reasons I'm bringing this up is one of the things I love about, and I thought this since I went to Fullerton, I've been a huge proponent of city colleges. And the reason we wanted to build a really good program here, and I had this in my mind ever since I left for 20 some odd years, that you could build a really great program at a city college.
Right.
And one of the things I like about that, and I think we are doing that here, and we're just going to constantly make it better, obviously, is that you guys can come here and for very little money, you can do some of that. Hey, I'm going to try this, I'm going to try that. And hopefully your instructors are going, because I'm really interested in a very broad range of design things. So when I talk to students, I try and go, you ever seen this? Because there was things when I was there, and I probably told you guys this, but when I had all these weird quirks about me when I was a kid and all this stuff, right? And when I went to Art Center, and I didn't go to, I had a teacher force me to go to Art Center, go look at it, right? And I found industrial design, and I was like, holy crap, that's it. That's the missing piece of my puzzle. You know what I mean? And that teacher is the one who forced me to go. He wasn't going to go, he didn't even know about industrial design. But when I saw that, I went, oh my God, all that weirdness about me when I was a kid, it's that. I was looking for that. Because you're kind of hardwired for this stuff in some bizarre way. You know what I mean?
Okay.
So what and then I've had students where they go, oh, I want to be entertainment designer. And I go, that's not what you want to do. You actually want to do this. And they'll usually fight you on it a little bit. And they'll go, no, I want to do this. I go, I'm telling you, it's not what you want to do. You want to do this. Your brain's about this. It's not about that. And I think this school, that's what a big part of it is. Like Braden, he'll find it over there. I just, I think I told you guys this. I just had my old intern, he just went and got his first big job at Art Center in Berlin. And now he just came back here and Apple Music just hired. I mean, he's tearing it up career-wise. And when it's weird because he went over there and he just became this other guy in a good way. You know, he's still a good, nice guy and a good kid and all that stuff. But man, he just got so much more sophisticated. And
Wow.
the stuff he's doing now, like the stuff he's doing for Apple Music, I couldn't even tell you exactly what he's doing there. It's sort of in a different skill set than I have. And time has changed that skill set and everything. So it's just interesting. So, you know, eventually I'll go over there and look at what he's doing because I'm interested in exactly what he's doing, because I know it's not like, he's not just sitting there doing like graphic design. He's doing who knows what, you know what I mean? And he's working from home right now too, okay? So anyway, that's a long-winded way of saying, you know, apply all these things and try different things. And I'm not saying advertising is like, I'm sure as hell not saying it's dead or anything, because it's not. What happened is like in my generation, advertising was television and print for the most part, radio, you know what I mean? That's not what it is anymore. Now it's obviously all these mega channels all over the place of all this different ways that they're putting out content. And like when people are talking about it all the time, they're like, well, what is advertising? It's not that it's that hard to understand. It's just if you're older, like me, or guys like me, or my age or whatever, then they always go, well, what is it now? Because it used to be like 3 things to find advertising. And it's like, well, it's still advertising. It's just that there's way more channels to get the advertising out. And you probably have to be way more sophisticated and smart in your thinking to hit those channels and to hit, you know, the amount of people you want to hit. I actually think that's an interesting problem to solve, you know?
Yeah.
It's actually really weird. One of the optional like requirements for the portfolio for the advertising part of Art Center is you create 3 memes.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that makes sense. And by the way, that's hard. Because if that wasn't hard, everybody every day would be creating memes. It's hard. You know? I was in the toy business for a long time, and this kind of reminds me of that. And one of the things, you guys might be too young for this, but there was a doll called the Tickle Me Elmo doll. It was just a phenomenon.
Oh my God.
And you turned it on and and it like vibrated. And the kids just went ape shit crazy for this thing, right? So every time you went and talked to a toy company, here was their question. All of them. They'd go, what's the next Tickle Me Elmo? And I'd always go, okay, number one, I don't know. And I go, let me tell you something. When they created that thing, they weren't creating a phenomenon. They were just creating another product. And it became a phenomenon. And I go, look, I can't tell you what the next Tickle Me Elmo is. And I go, and anybody that comes in here in this job interview process and tells you they can is full of crap. Okay? But you guys are a different generation. You guys have kind of learned, you've grown up with this stuff, okay? With this idea of memes and all this language, you know. It's only old farts like me that you know, that probably have a harder time with it. I think it's really interesting and I embrace it and all that kind of thing. If I was out competing with kids your age right now, trying to do that, you guys are going to probably kick the crap out of it because it's a native language to you guys. It wasn't a native language to me. I came from a whole different world. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I don't like it when teachers who are old farts like me negate what's going on because it's not their world. I've noticed this because I saw it with my dad, and you see it with every generation. There's an age as you're getting older where the whole world changes.
Yeah.
So for my dad, it was the hippie era. It was the Cultural Revolution in the 60s, right? So my dad was a Midwestern guy who was like, goddamn hippies. You know, he didn't like that, right? I get it. His whole world went upside down, right? With me, it was like, you know, the whole kind of hip hop culture that kind of changed music where you weren't playing music anymore. It was all done on a laptop. I'm like, oh, I don't like this crap. You know, and it's the same thing. You know what I mean? But I think if you're aware of it and going, come on, man, it's just, it happens to every old dude. You know, it's just the world changes.
Yeah.
And you got to embrace some of it. And some of it, you look at it, like there's a lot of stuff that my dad used to tell us when I was a kid about like that music sucks and da-da-da, and you go, oh, you're just old. But now I look back and I go, hey, he's kind of right. That did kind of suck. You know what I mean? And you have to be I think it's really important for a designer to be able to extract themselves from their era and look at your era in the time of your era and be able to sift through the crap and the stuff that's not going to last for 10 minutes. And as a designer go, okay, you guys want to use that right now. Okay, but probably if this time frame is 4 months that we're going to get this out there, this thing might be gone. Like this isn't, and especially in your time now, I mean, everything's so accelerated now that you have to be the one who goes, man, that's a bad idea. You know what I mean? Like you got to put that, you got to be able to, it's just like we all look at pictures of ourselves from 10 years ago and go, what the hell were we thinking? Right? And we'll do it 10 years from now because you're in this era and you're just in it. You know what I mean? And you don't realize how silly a lot of this stuff is. You need to be constantly looking at that and just kind of sifting through what's going to last and oh wait, this is going to kind of go over here. One thing I see a lot are just cultural trends and things like that, where you can see like this thing that's happening right now is going to kind of drift to this thing. And you can start to see it if you're looking at it all the time. I think all that stuff makes you really valuable as a designer. And if you're not aware of your cultural moment and kind of a few steps ahead of your cultural moment, you're kind of dead in the water because what do you bring into the table? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like Braden's Grosvenor Art Center, man, when I go over there and I look at what they're doing, I mean, those kids are such crazy big thinkers, you know. Somebody came out from Art Center not too long ago. They were talking about this product that they were developing was just totally mind-blowing. You know what I mean? And it was like such a weird, different way of looking at that particular product or whatever. You know what I mean? That I was again going, man, that is so next level thinking, you know? And that's why you want to be in that environment of competition. You want to be in a competitive environment with other students who are really good. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Whenever you go into a class, whether it's here or somewhere else, find the person who's doing the best work and kick the crap out of them, because then you elevate yourself, right?
Yeah.
And I don't mean that, and I might have said this before, but I don't mean that like a snotty competitive way. I mean it like in a kind of personal competitive way.
Right.
You know, it's a gunslinger attitude where you go in and go, oh, you're the best one in class? I'm going to kick the crap out of you. You know what I mean? And only as a way to keep elevating yourself. It's like, that's the top in the room. I'm going to be better than that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And do that in every single class. It's just a good technique to elevate your skill set. Okay?
That's true. Okay.
And your thinking. And go and don't look at things apple. I know I'm on a tangent here, but and don't go look at apples to apples. That's what everybody does. I went in for a while and I did I was running the package division for like the specialty gift food thing. And we went out to the fancy food show in San Francisco when I first came there. We went out to the show. And they're walking around and they're going, yeah, look at this, look at that. And I go, yeah, I get it. I go, this is a good snapshot of the industry for me. I go, but all you're talking about is copying this and copying that and copying this. I go, I'm not here to copy stuff. I'm here to get a snapshot of this industry and then go, what can I not copy? What's the freebie here? What can I create that none of these people have thought of? Because what's the point of copying things? Why do I want to swim in somebody's wake? I don't want to do that. You know what I mean? Yeah. But that was their mindset of this company, was just this constant copying stuff. And I have a hard time with that. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Now I forgot what I was talking about. Oh, real quick. Let me see if I have. Yeah, so I love this one. I think it's great.
Thank you.
Wow, who did this one?
That was me.
Wow, so that's all vector in there?
Yeah.
How did you create that?
I took a picture off the internet of a desert formation, and then I just kind of went in with different colored brushes.
Holy shit.
And then the highlights on that's just one like of the scatter brushes that you sent, and I just kind of popped it in there underneath all the rest of it.
Dude, that's killer. That's killer. That's great, man.
Thank you.
No complaints about that. Yeah, well, I was going to say, do you get it all? But it sure looks like you do, right? What's your major?
It's graphic design right now.
Okay. Well, keep pursuing this sort of illustration stuff, correct?
Yeah, I actually had a lot of fun with it.
Yeah, and keep doing that. Keep pursuing that. You want to keep that. And I think I've said this too before. When I used to look at portfolios, and I wasn't usually always, oh, well, sometimes I was looking for a graphic designer once in a while. And they'd come in, they'd have a great graphic design portfolio, and then they'd always make this fatal error where at the end of the portfolio, they would put an illustration section. And in the illustration section were stuff from like basic drawing, I don't know, basic painting. I mean, just completely destroyed their portfolio, okay?
Yeah.
And I would be sold up until that point. I'd be like, oh, cool, you know? And then they would put that in there, and then I'd always go, I'm not gonna hire this person. And I'd always have a conversation with them because I thought it was actually valuable. And I would go, look, you had me here, but that illustration thing killed your chances of this job. And the reason is that you don't have a sophisticated enough brain to understand that that is not illustration. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So but on the other end of that, if I'd get people and they'd have some illustration stuff in there, you know, it might be vector stuff or whatever, and it was really cool, then that was a plus, because then I go, wow, this person's a really good graphic designer, but I can give them some illustration stuff too. It takes stuff off my plate, because, you know, or whoever's plate, and I can use them, you know, I'm getting 2 for 1 basically, right? So it could go either way, but make sure that you're putting in some nice, good stuff in there. Make sense?
For sure.
Okay. Let me. And then. Oh, wait, hang on. Make sure. Okay. Where's oh. Luke. You there?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. I like it. Yeah, what do you think? You there?
Hey, yeah, just not sure if you're asking me or everyone else.
You, yeah, you.
Uh,
Because I like it.
yeah.
But the only thing I do maybe is put some like nice big billowy clouds out here. Okay? And that might just be a soft brush, because these are fairly dark objects, and that'll really silhouette them and they'll pop out. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. But I like it. Good job. And let me see if I can find this real quick. I'm pretty sure I did. Let's see if I'm set up for this or not. Okay, there's some stuff I want to go over next week. I was going to go over it today, but I think it's going to be a little more involved. I want to do it a little more involved than I planned on. So if it's anything that's over maybe 20 minutes, I'll put it on YouTube ahead of the class, and then we'll go over it in class.
But isn't next week spring break, or we're still working?
Oh, yeah, I mean the following week.
Hmm.
So I'm just going to come here and take this skull thing, and I'm going to elaborate on this after the break. I want to go to Object, Pattern, Make. Okay, so I get this. Now, when I come in here, and now we have a pattern options right here, which is under our windows, like all of our pattern or all of our, you know, palettes. And if I come in here and go pull this out and do different things to it, it's gonna push these things out. I'm gonna go, so this is on grid. I can switch it this way by column. And what I'm gonna show you next week is how to do like repeat patterns and stuff like that on this. So let's just leave it there for now. And then here you have how it overlaps right here. This is another thing that you have to go in and start playing around with a little bit. And I'm looking for, there it goes. So I hit this size tile to art, so it kind of blew it out a little bit here where it's gonna get not overlapping each other so bad. But I could come here, if I pulled them in and I had them overlapping, this overlap will just tell which one's in front of which one. That's about all it is, okay? You can go in here and play with these a little bit. And there's a couple things I'll show you next week on this. But once this thing is made, it lives, which is a handy tool. It lives here in your swatches palette, and it just fills that up like that. So I can just endlessly fill something with a space. And what I'll show you next week is I want to show you guys how to do a repeat pattern with it. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay, and what it's useful, I mean, it's useful for a lot of things, but one thing it's useful for is the textile industry a lot. So if you're doing, the department next to me at Disney used to be called Home, right? Weird Toys, they were Home. They did a lot of bed sheets, pillowcase, you know, all that kind of stuff with pattern on, textile patterns. That makes sense? There's actually a lot of work for that out there. I see it a lot where they're looking for textile people and stuff like that who can do that type of production work and that type of creative work. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
And a lot of other things. I mean, that's not the only thing, but it's a good thing to know how to do because I know, to me, I'm always looking at, and I think I've said this before, when you're a working designer, you want to have a lot of different things going on because you don't want to sit there and wait for the phone to ring for the one skill you have, okay? Because you're going to starve or you're going to be a waiter or whatever, okay? And I don't want that. I want you guys, let me let me switch my view here. Okay. And then I've got, wait, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, good. Okay, so after this meeting, I want you to play with the pattern thing and the gradient, you know, that gradient tool that we just talked about. I'll put this up online. I'm not going to give you anything yet. I'm going to go over it when we come back. And when we come back, I'm going to go over, there's a couple of tools that I want to go over when we come back that are going to require a little more, they're a little trickier. They're not hard, but they're a little trickier. But from here on out, I'm probably going to go into the ones that are a little more sophisticated. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Good job, you guys. If everybody does that kind of level we had today, I'll be stoked. Okay?
Okay.
Questions?
I was actually having a problem with my project where like I only added like I would only add like 1 or 2 textures, and by then my Illustrator would just start crashing.
That, I mean, I don't know your machine. I've said that in the beginning that like the stuff, you know, it does bog up your system. One thing you can do, like I've said, is you could go in, keep your original, always keep your original, and then just option drag it on the desktop or wherever you have it, make a copy, and then you could go into all those strokes you made and grab them and go up to option path outline stroke, right? And that will at least take it out of holding all that. It's still going to have a lot of points to think about, but it's usually going to, whenever Illustrator is holding on to the original information, okay, just like when we, you know, we've done this expand appearance thing, if it's holding on to the, like, let's say when you warp a type, right, like we just looked at last time, okay?
Yeah.
And you see that little thing where it's holding the original type in there so you can go back if you want. Whenever it's doing that, it's holding extra information, okay? Or if I went in and I go, I'm going to live trace this, a bunch of clouds or something, man, it's going to have to hold so many points in there, you know? And that could come in where I go, well, maybe I'll live trace it, but then I'll take it into Photoshop and I will create a bitmap out of it like we did with some of these textures that we talked about. And then I'll just pop it back in as a bitmap, which is pretty not memory intensive as all those points are. And maybe I solve my problem that way, you know?
Okay.
And just, it also depends on how powerful your machine is, okay? Like this machine I'm on is like 7 years old, but for some reason it's a pretty good, pretty stable, because I edit a ton of video all the time and it does a pretty good job of it, you know? So part of it's just your machine and part of it is just how heavy that file is. So at some point, that's why you want to know Photoshop well, know this well, and know different things. So you can kind of go, okay, my machine's having a problem. I got a deadline tomorrow. I got to figure this out. And you'll have solutions at your disposal. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Other questions?
Did you update Illustrator?
My
me?
Illustrator?
No, Jet.
Oh.
For me, I'm actually not even. I can't use CC on my machine. I'm using CS6.
Oh, okay. Yeah, mine was
Yeah.
like getting bogged down like seriously, and then I updated and restarted. But I also realized that if you work a little smaller, because it's vector and you can blow it up to any size,
Sure.
the file
Yeah.
didn't lag so much.
Oh, that's a great idea. Just make
Yeah,
sure
that's
it's ratio.
yeah. I didn't think about that. Yeah.
I hadn't thought about that. That's a great idea.
Yeah, I'll probably do that.
And also, yeah, just make sure that, you know, obviously it's the right ratio if you're smaller. I hadn't thought of that. That's a great idea. Because, yeah, I mean, you can blow it up at the end any size you want anyway. So why work it, you know, oh, I'm doing a final at 3 feet by 3 feet, just ratio that down and work small. That makes sense. Other questions? So everybody's going to have that up in there by tonight, right?
Yeah.
Get them in there. Go ahead.
We're dropping it into that same drive folder.
I put it's in the assignments.
Okay.
Actually, it's in two places. The announcement I did yesterday about this meeting and blah, 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 it's in there. And it's also under the assignment itself.
Okay.
Probably just go to the assignment itself. I usually put the folder in there, like, I don't know, the day before it's due. And I do that. I probably told you guys this, but I do that because I don't like people going, they half-ass it and they throw it in the folder. And I just noticed they do that for some reason. And it bothers me because it's like, if you have the gift of some time to work on something, take advantage of it. You know what I mean? Like, if I'm working on even like a drawing or something like that, if I have a little bit of time on it, man, it's so valuable because I'll look at it and go, I think this looks pretty good. Then I look at it the next day when I haven't looked at it overnight, and it just looks like crap. And then I can adjust. Okay, and then I look at it again a couple hours later, and I go, that's a little off balance. I just did it right now. I'm doing a logo, and I figured it was done, and I haven't looked at it for like a week because it's just for my girlfriend's restaurant, so I have time on it. But then I looked at it and go, oh, there's a little thing right there where I can balance it a little bit, and it's just balance stuff. You know what I mean? Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So take advantage of that stuff. That way you can keep getting layers of sophistication. A big part of whatever it is, design, illustration, any of that stuff, a big part of it is sophistication, that you're constantly raising your, you like Braden's going over to Art Center. I think he's doing really good work now, but when he looks at it, he's going to do a term or two at Art Center and look back and go, oh God, you know what I mean? I look at the stuff that I was so proud of when I was at Fullerton now, and it's not that it was bad. It was fine for what I was doing at the time. But it's really just a sophistication thing in how you're looking at your work and getting exposed. And this is another thing, you guys. You need to go out and expose yourself to really sophisticated, good work, okay? Whatever that means. And that means, go to Mocha. Just go drop into Mocha and check it out and see what's up. You might go in there. I used to go in there all the time. I didn't look at what they were showing or anything. And I just drop in there. And sometimes I go in there and go, I don't care for this. And then sometimes I go in there and just totally get my mind blown, okay? Or LACMA or whatever, or Pacific Design Center, or, on and on and on, like different shows and things like that, or galleries, galleries that are showing really interesting contemporary work. It doesn't have to be what you do. It has to be things that just inspire you, or you look at, just look at things and go, wow, look at the way they're handling that. That's really interesting. And you're not going to take that idea, but it triggers something. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So normally I would say, hey, over the break, go look at something, but we can't. But, and I think it's also important that you don't just look at it online, that you actually go look at the work. Okay. And get around that group of people who are doing that kind of work, and around that crowd and all that kind of thing, and that community or whatever it is. Go over La Luz de Jesus or whatever it's called, the gallery over in Hollywood. They do openings every, I think, third Friday or whatever it is. And they're interesting. Sometimes I don't like them. Sometimes they're really interesting, but it's an interesting group of people to be around, an interesting mix. And just expose yourself to a lot of stuff, man. You can't think sophisticated if you're not around it enough. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I'm going to start posting actually events that I think maybe you guys might be interested in. And they're probably not going to be, it's something I've been trying to do with the entertainment students for a long time, to get them out of that ecosystem of nothing but pop culture. because that, I don't think that's valuable. I mean, I think it's valuable in one way, but when it's you're eating cultural junk food every day, and I don't think that's valuable to eat nothing but cultural junk food every day. I think cultural junk food is great, but I don't think a steady diet of it is great. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. All right, you guys, then I'm going to see you on Monday after next week, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. It's going to be good for me because I actually need a week to get caught up, and I need a week to put together what we're going to start doing next week, because it's going to get a little more sophisticated and everything, and I'll look at what our next project is. Okay.
Okay.
Ready?
Okay. So far, all that stuff.